welcome to another UE4 tutorial. This video is one that was voted on by my patrons and my members on YouTube for the month of October, and that is how to create a menu and sub-menu system inside Unreal Engine 4. So what we'll be covering today is that, but also just generic how to handle some big widget questions that people often have. So hopefully we'll come to those solutions that some people usually have as regular issues with widgets. So to get started, we need to make various items and various menus for our character to have. So I'm going to create a new user widget, and I'm going to create the menu system first and foremost. So this menu system is going to house all the other menus that we have inside of it. So we need to make those other menus. So another widget, and this is going to be a menu underscore inventory. Like so. And then I'm going to make another one, and this one's going to be called menu underscore map, and we'll do one more, menu underscore equipment. Okay, so let's design some of these very quickly. I'm not going to spend too long on these, so we don't need a canvas panel for this. We can get rid of that. But what we can do instead is just simply have a border panel instead. Just right up the top. Yep. And I'm just going to turn the opacity of this one down a bit. Change brush color. And change that to 0.8. Okay, and inside that I'm going to have some text, and the text over here is going to say in this one is equipment, and we can change various things like the font size if we want. Change that one to 64, make it nice and big, like so. And basically all the various widgets that you have, you just make them as you would here. So if you followed my equipment system series, you just make that widget for the equipment here, and that same goes for the inventory and the map as well. So if you followed my tutorials, it's exactly the same. It's just the contents inside a widget like this. Okay, so you add the various panels and so forth. But the ultimate gist of it is that you have separate widgets for your individual screens that you would have in your game. So I'm going to fast forward now and do the other two screens. Okay, so I've done my other two, and they're simply exactly the same, empty widgets, but again, they'll be filled up with whatever you are showing. So once you've got your sub menus, we now need to work on our main menu. So go into your menu system, and in here we're going to use something called a widget switcher. So find your widget switcher and drag that into your canvas panel. And this thing, we want to cover the whole entire screen. So I'm going to change my anchor here to the full screen there. And we're going to change the offset to be reset to its defaults, and offset right to be 0, and offset bottom to be 0 as well. And click compile. And we can change the name of this if we want as well. So we go sub menu switcher and compile. Now the way this menu switcher, this widget switcher works is that you can put content inside of it, children widgets inside of it, and you can choose which one's active by changing this index over here. So let's add our children widgets. So I've got my equipment, my inventory, and my menu map. And for example, if I change this one to say 1, you can see it changes the inventory, 2 changes it to map. Okay, so we've got those 3 in there, and you put as many as you need for your submenus, and compile that. And we're going to go into the graph editor for this thing. So actually, before we get into graph editor, let's actually make it so we can actually open it onto our window, onto our screen here. So I'm going to go into my character's input settings. So go into project settings and go to input, and my action mappings here. I'm going to add a new action mapping for the menu screen. So I'm going to do menu and it's going to be the M key, like so. Close that. Okay, so on our character, if I was to push the menu action event, what I want to do is create the widget for the menu. Create widget, menu system, and we're going to add that to viewport. When it's added to the viewport, because it is a menu, we want to change the input mode to the UI. So get your player controller, and from its return value, drag out and set the input mode to UI only. Now this thing's going to ask for a widget to focus on. This allows you to have inputs set on that widget. So input widget, we're going to drag from our return value over to our in widget to focus. So we're telling the widget that we just made is the one we're focusing on. That means that this one will be able to tell when we're inputting keys. Click compile, and we're done with this. And we want to make sure our menu, so go to menu system, we're going to click on the root of your hierarchy, so menu system here, and over the right hand side you'll see interaction is focusable. Tick that box and that means that can be focused. So that little tick, thing we literally just done when we dragged the pin over from return value to widget to focus, we need that to also be ticked on to say that it can be focused on. So I'm going to click close on that and push play, and if I hit M, it creates the menu on the screen. Okay, like so. Now I'm going to showcase something else as well, in that I'm going to put our offsets on this widget here. We're going to put 100 there, 100 there, 100 there, 100 there. Okay, so it's sort of brought in like so. Compile and go to here. I'm just going to mute my laptop and push play again. So here I've got my equipment widget. So mouse is fine. If I click outside of it, the mouse disappears. That's because the focus has now left that widget, because I've clicked somewhere else outside of that widget's visible space. To make that so it doesn't do that, on your menu system, or any widget you're working on its root component here, click on the canvas panel, and because the canvas panel controls the whole entire thing, you want to change its visibility behavior. So at the moment it's self hit test invisible. Change that to visible, and that means then all of it will be seen as a visible when you hit it. So it will no longer change and lose your focus. It will stay focused on the widget selector. So now we've got the setup of it displaying. Let's do the code to make it switch between the different submenus. So on my graph, I'm going to override a function. So go on to the left hand side, you'll see functions, override, or add a function. You want to choose override. And you're choosing override because this function already exists. You're just changing what it does. And we want to use the on key down. Choose that. And before we go any further on here, go back to your event graph. And we're going to create a new custom event. And this custom event is key pressed. So this event is going to be called whenever we are pushing a key, which is going to be fed through by this key down override. I want my custom event though to say a particular name of the key that we're showing. So on my inputs here, I want to do key name as an input, and we'll change the name of the type of it to name or text. Sorry, change it to text. And the way this works is that you're going to come out of key name here into a switch. Okay. So on your key pressed event, we need an input. So go to your inputs in the bottom left here, new parameter, and we'll change that to key name and to a string value. And you want a string value because we want to do a switch on a string. So do switch on string, and the way a switch works is that we can add a pin to it, and you see case 0. if I go to my details panel, I can change what case 0 is. So if I change this to the letter A, that means that when I eventually do the code for it, when I push A, it will go down this route. If I add another pin and do case 1 to be D, that now means that D is going to be called when I push the D key. So it does like if A do this, if D do this, and the default means if it doesn't match any of these, do that. Okay. I'm also going to do another one for M, for our menu key. So when I push the menu key, I want it to actually close. So we'll leave that as is for now. So with A and D, we're going to do a cycle around on what menu that we're currently showing. So we're going to make a function for this. So I'm going to go over to new function, and we're going to go next page and call it next page. This is also going to have a variable. So scroll down on the bottom left, you'll see inputs, and you want new parameter, and we're going to call this one is previous page, and you'll change that to a boolean. So we can now do next page and previous page on the same function. Don't need to make two functions for this. So on the next page here, we're going to cycle through to various different values. So to do that, we need an index variable. So on your widget settings on my blueprint on the left hand side, you'll see variables. Click on new variable, and this is called index, and it'll be an integer. And this is what's going to be fed into our widget switcher here. So we're going to assign that to this. So on your next page, it's going to handle the cycling of that index. So first thing we'll do is determine whether or not we're going up or down a page using this boolean. So do that into a branch. So if it's true, we're going down a page. If we're false, we're going up a page. So let's do false first. Drag your index variable out and choose get, and we'll do increment. So we're going to add 1 to it, essentially. That's what increment does. It adds 1 to the index. We're then going to check whether or not index is greater than a certain value. If it's greater than or equal to another integer. And the other integer we're going to compare it to is the number of children that exist inside our character, in our menu. So if we drag our submenu switcher variable out and choose get, from here we can get children count. So this would be 3. Okay, so if I plug that in, that means it's now going to do, if index is greater than or equal to 3, we want it to go down to 0. So put that into a branch. And we're going to set the index then to 0 if it's true. So get children count is 3 in this case because our submenu has 3 children. So if the index goes from 2 to 3, so 2 add 1 makes it 3. 3 is greater than or equal to because it's equal to the children count. That means it's true. You'll set it back to 0, which is what we want because it's a 0 based index. Okay, so now let's do the decrease. So this is exactly the same pretty much except the opposite. So grab the index, get, this time it's decrement. So take away 1 is what that does. And then we're going to check whether or not that is less than or equal to 0. Put that into a branch. And if it is less than or equal to 0, we want to set the index to the number of children that we've got. But rather than the number of children, because that's going to return 3, we don't have a third index, only go up to 0, 1 and 2. We want to change it to the last index. So if you drag your submenu switcher out, choose get, then get children, you'll see get all children. This returns an array. That array, we can simply just get the last index, which is basically the last number. So it'd be 2 in that case. Now what this means is that this will work no matter how many submenus I put into it. I don't have to change nothing on this, it will just work. Once we've done that, we're going to set the menu switcher to be set to that index. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do next page here into a sequence first. So it does then 0 first, and then on then 1 we're going to get this set submenu switcher get and active widget index into then 1, and index variable we've got will go into that integer value there, and click compile. Go to your event graph, and we're going to put our next page onto the A and tick is previous page, which can go left on the page, and next page again onto D, this time leaving that as false. Okay, so that's most of it done. The last part is to actually call this key pressed event. So that it comes back to our override that we started earlier. So the override, we're going to get the in key event and call the get key node, and that simply just gets the key that's been pushed. From there we can get the display name, and I'm going to then right click anywhere and just call that key pressed event that we just made. Connect that up with our execute lines, so, and key name, just drag into your return value down here and it'll convert it for you. Lastly, the return value here, you want to determine whether it was handled or not. Just type in handled. And that means that the function basically ended successfully. Okay. So now we can close this, push play, open up the menu, and now if I hit A and D, it will cycle through our things. Problem. Just notice it's not going to the equipment, and I just realized why. It's because our next page event function, we don't want less than or equal to 0, we want just less than 0, because there is such a thing as a 0 index. My apologies. Now if I push M, it will cycle through all 3 and go next. So on a controller, in controller-based games, these are usually reserved for L1 and R1, or RB, LB, and it will cycle through tabs at the top, which you can do quite easily with some text values and change their appearance based on what current screen you're on. But that is how you do a cycle through submenus. Obviously, we could do this with buttons as well. So if you put in buttons, you can simply just do on button key down. You just set the active index to whatever number you want it to be. I thought I'd show that method, this method rather, because it is a bit more complicated and people will probably have less idea of how to actually achieve it. So last thing we need to do is actually close the menu. So that goes back down to that switch that we had on our event graph, where we have the M, and all we can do here is just simply remove from parent, and we need to reset the player controller get player controller and change the input mode to game only. Now when I toggle the menu off and on, I can't click off of it, it just cycles through using my keys, and that is it. That's how we do a menu and submenu system. If you have any further questions or further unique things you want to figure out how to do in this sort of topic, please leave a comment below. And if you want to see videos like this and many others, head over to patreon.com/RyanAiley. As I said, this was one that was voted on by my supporters. So if you want to take part in that next vote for next month, head over to Patreon right now and you can start cast your vote. Starting from the silver tier, which is $5 a month. Thanks very much for everyone for watching, and thank you to all my top patrons for their support this month. Wouldn't be doing this without you guys. You are stars. So thank you very much, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.